In this lecture, we're going to discuss some of the related laws and matters or issues, ethical issues associated with justifying research using animals as the subjects, if you want to use that term, and verifying that you have determined there are no alternative approaches viable to force you basically to replace the animals with some other type of approach. Could be cell culture or it could be some type of computerized system. So this is Module 3, Lecture 3. Let's switch over to this presentation. I didn't have the PowerPoint file for this at the time of recording, so I'm using the PDF file. Let's see how that works. Oops, pushed the wrong button. Need the pip. So this is Module 3, Lecture 3, Research Ethics and Related Laws. We are discussing the tips for searching for alternatives to animal research and testing. In the prior lecture, Module 3, Lecture 2, the IACUC, Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee protocol application form was discussed. And one of the headings on there required you to submit information justifying that you had ruled out all possible alternatives to the approach, if you're using whole animals, the approach that you have selected. So this is one of the responsibilities of scientists working with animals, live animals in research. Even if you're working with dead animals, they're alive at one time, so you still have to justify how they went from being alive to dead for you to use them. Regardless, we will also consider the Animal Welfare Act in this context, and much of the information that I'll present comes from the Animal Welfare Information Center of the United States Department of Agriculture, USDA. This was the site that I used to get this information for our presentation. I do have some actual feedback from the IACUC at UTSA and the animal use protocol proposal that was submitted for the project that we discussed with experimental design and methods. So you get to see some of the matters that had to be dealt with in order to propose that type of study, which involved survival surgery and chronic implantation of catheters and brain cannula and inducing panic in the animals. So the Animal Welfare Act, pulling from Section 1, this act may be cited as the Animal Welfare Act, as stated here on top. Under B, Section 1B, the Congress finds that animals and activities which are regulated under this act are either in interstate or foreign commerce or substantially affect such commerce or the free flow thereof, and that regulation of animals and activities as provided in this act is necessary to prevent and eliminate burdens upon each commerce and to effectively regulate such commerce in order, 1, to ensure that animals intended for use in research facilities or for exhibition purposes or for use as pets are provided humane care and treatment. So this is the important aspect of the Animal Welfare Act for research. It is including utilization of animals in research along with basically all other types of and forms of utilization of animals, even as pets. So if any of us have watched the pet police shows on the public television stations or cable channels, then we know that some of the regulations can be enforced through the law, and the pet owners can be penalized quite extensively, taking the pets away, fines, even imprisonment or incarceration as part of the punishment. So it becomes quite severe. So here again we're on the border of the beneficence and non-maleficence. If harm, and in this case to animals, if harm is incurred, in this case again to animals, harm basically being equivalent to pain and suffering, and might be some others, but these are the two that we think of most, and that really are the most potent in invoking non-maleficence as a principle, and therefore legal ramifications and potential legal punishments are included. So this extends as well for utilization of animals in research. If an abusive pet owner can be fined and imprisoned, so can a researcher, but the researcher could lose rights to continue the ongoing research activity, as well as to use animals again for maybe some period of time or possibly forever. So second, to assure the humane treatment of animals during transportation in commerce. And remember, research animals are part of commerce as well, not for consumption, but certainly, well, for consumption as far as using them in research, but not for ingestion, let's say. So to protect the owners of animals from the theft of their animals by preventing the sale or use of the animals which have been stolen. So these become very important issues in our society and the world society. So it's essential that we take care to honor and respect these aspects of the Animal Welfare Act. Now, this can create a moral dilemma, if you will, if you think of the prior lecture where we discussed animal rights, the utilization of animals in research, Module 3, Lecture 1. You recall that animal rights were stated in there, but not everyone necessarily recognizes and agrees to all of those animal rights. So this is a controversial area, and it somewhat comes down to your own beliefs. But whether you believe it or not, these are imposed, and you are responsible and accountable for these criteria, conditions, and requirements, especially under the Animal Welfare Act. So the Congress further finds that it is essential to regulate, as provided in this Act, the transportation, purchase, sale, housing, care, handling, and treatment of animals by carriers or by persons or organizations engaged in using them for research or experiment purposes or for exhibition purposes, or holding them for sale as pets or for any such purpose or use. The Congress further finds that number one, the use of animals is instrumental in certain research and education for advancing knowledge of cures and treatment for diseases and injuries which afflict both humans and animals. So here again we're playing cost, excuse me, the cost-benefit aspect of this, or benefit versus harm, or risk versus benefit. Whatever it is, that type of an assessment. There's some good that can come from this for everyone, including animals. Maybe not the animal that's used in the research study, but animals of the future, and so on and so forth. So it is recognized that there is a good and a justification for utilization of animals in these ways. The methods of testing that do not use animals are being and continue to be developed. So this is the alternatives, which are faster, less expensive, and more accurate than traditional animal experiments for some purposes, and further opportunities exist for the development of these methods of testing. And of course, as you know, the cosmetic commercial business was impacted heavily by that matter and that part of the Animal Welfare Act significantly. Measures which eliminate or minimize we'll talk about the R's related to our goals of the utilization of animals in research in a moment, but obviously eliminate and minimize, replace, and reduce are two of the R's. The unnecessary duplication of experiments. So if you are going to duplicate research that someone else has accomplished, then you have to have a strong justification for it. Remember that replication of findings, through similar, if not identical, experimental approaches, and preferably in different laboratories by different experimenters and scientists, research groups, was one of the major criteria for establishing a causal association. So there's a conflict here of getting that strongly associated hypothesis, that will become fact through this one aspect, the replication. How do you justify it? The duplication of experiments on animals can result in more productive use of federal funds. So here again, you have to justify it not only ethically but economically as far as utilization of the financial resources to replicate such an experiment. The measures which help meet the public concern for laboratory animal care and treatment are important in assuring that research will continue to progress. So we see this as the back and forth in the Animal Welfare Act of weighing benefit versus loss, risk of loss, and the loss and benefits are seen from many different perspectives. So let's take a look at a feedback on that IACUC proposal that I had put in. This was a memorandum 5 years ago at the time of recording here, but still the matter is very basic and will continue, if not in the same format, in some format throughout the future. So there's a protocol number, a title, the hippocampal 5-HT1A mediated panicolysis. Sounds similar. And the other one was the asymmetry of hippocampal 5-HT1A mediated panicolysis. So if you recall the readings of the experimental designs, you see how these titles are associated with what was proposed. The committee has requested a clarification of the search mechanism I used to develop the relevant literature search results. There are two reasons for reporting search strategies to the IACUC. That is to validate that research is not being duplicated and that no alternative is available to reduce, refine, or replace the animals being used. So here are the 3 R's of using animals in research: reduce, refine, and replace. We saw eliminate and minimize as the 2 here, and obviously refining should minimize as well. So I have enclosed several pages. This is my response to their inquiry on exactly how I performed the literature searches and database searches for ruling out that a reasonable alternative was available or possible or even feasible. So I've enclosed several pages of printouts from searches I repeated today that will serve as an example of my overall strategy for such searches. So first, it was important to establish that no direct investigations have been reported that serotonin in the hippocampus plays a role in panic etiology or treatment. So the first page in the enclosure shows the result of searching of a search combining panic and serotonin and the hippocampus through PubMed Medline over the complete history that they have there. Only 2 articles were found, both reported by one research group, and both of the authors' names related articles were provided through a link conveniently through the PubMed, and looked at their other relevant literature by these workers and by others that cited their work. Next, I had to determine if the sodium lactate rat model of panic induction was prevalent in the literature. Again, I performed a search and run these in other databases noted on the IACUC proposal and the original one that I put in. So using more than one database and search engine, combined panic, lactate, and rat, and it turned up only 9 citations from 66 to 2000. All but 3 of these are referenced in the proposal, and on the 2 proposals that were being covered by the protocol as well, I clicked on the authors' names and the related articles options to evaluate other relevant literature. So using every avenue to search as extensively and exhaustively as possible. As an example of how other databases differ from PubMed, I enclose a similar search strategy from BioMedNet. With the simple search, I combined lactate and panic in rat, which found 435,549 citations. Went on to modify to an advanced search option where I combined panic with the full mesh and lactate with title only and excluded all human terms in the full mesh and found only 6 citations. This search was not as successful as through the PubMed. Next, I wanted to seek computer models as alternatives. Again, with the BioMedNet, I combined panic and computer model. This search found 248 citations. First on the list, based on relevance, was most interesting. I clicked on the author option and evaluated the relevant literature, which I also printed out as an example. I printed the abstracts for 2 of the interesting articles found with this search. Note, citation number 3 includes the term asymmetries in the title. This type of finding from searches sent me on similar literature investigations and resulted in the second proposal included on the protocol, the title here. Note also how searching the author, the Goddard found before, revealed pertinent studies on these different transmitters and drugs and human studies and panic on the effective treatments. Following through with that author and related record searches fostered more refined independent searches in these areas. So obviously you can spend a lot of time searching and developing search strategies, and you have to demonstrate that you have put forth a good faith effort and that it is exhaustive and extensive. So this same research group found by the computer model search was enclosed. It suggests development of neural networks to investigate the pathophysiology and treatment of panic disorder. Note that the authors did not show up on the search on serotonin, hippocampus, and panic. They are not aware of our original observations. Thus, any model they propose cannot take into account our data and ideas. So it emphasizes a novel contribution. The abstract by Bruder et al. Is included to show that when the term computer is included in such searches, none of the hits are due to terms like computer assisted, mostly for brain imaging techniques utilizing the computers. Back on Goddard and Cheney's abstract, note that I've highlighted the mesh term neural networks computer. By clicking on this term, I was taken to the site of neural networks computers, which I also enclosed. I clicked on the search and was taken to the next page wherein I searched panic restricted by mesh to neural networks computers. Again, only the Goddard and Charney article was found. Then I searched anxiety in the same restricted mesh and found only 4 items. The first is a very interesting model, but as can be seen in the attached abstract printout, this is a model of bidirectional associative memory, human neuropsychiatry only, and provides a theoretical basis for explaining the clinical symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So you can see that it can just really take a great deal of time to convince yourself that you have followed every possible avenue and exhausted every possible mechanism for extracting the pertinent literature. At present, this model is not appropriate to studies on effective therapies for panic, even though panic is prevalent in post-traumatic stress disorder. Note that neither of these neural network models take into account the cardiovascular functions of the hippocampus, which was a novel contribution of the work that was presented in the proposals. So these sample searches demonstrate that we are not duplicating any studies and that the use of live animals cannot be replaced by another model. From my searches on alternative models of panic and noting the number of animals required in these complex behavioral studies, I'm convinced that we are effectively reducing the number of animals that would be used to study the hippocampus as a target for serotonin-mediated therapies with panic disorder through a refinement of the research model, and then there were enclosures. So now let's go on to see some of the tips that I found on the internet for searching for alternatives to animal research and testing. And made a recommendation that the IACUC refer researchers to this site article, as well as to other articles on the alternatives at this site in the future to help the applicants understand what is being requested in this section of the application. So here are several of the other helpful sites to go out and take a look at. So this one is provided, these were provided by the Animal Welfare Information Center, United States Department of Agriculture, the USDA, and the National Agricultural Library. The AWIC tips for searching for alternatives to animal research and testing was another source of assistance in that. So the edited version of this document is published in the journal Lab Animal by Cynthia P. Smith, Technical Information Specialist at the Animal Welfare Information Center, this acronym AWIC. So the following guidelines were developed to assist researchers, information specialists, and IACUC members when conducting literature searches to determine if alternatives to the use of animals exist and whether a protocol unnecessarily duplicates previous research. So in searching for alternatives, the staff at the AWIC refer to the tenets of the 3 R's introduced by W.M.S. Russell and R.L. Birch in 1959 in their book, The Principles of Humane Experimental Technique 1. The 3 R's represent reduction in the number of animals used, refinement of techniques and procedures that reduce pain and distress, and replacement of animals with non-animal techniques. So these are those 3 R's that we mentioned before. Certainly in the reading of the Animal Welfare Act, we understand the ethical basis for reaching this short list of recommendations or guidelines in working with animals in research. So the first step is conducting a search for alternatives. In conducting a search for alternatives involves communication between the investigator and the information specialist, who you'd find at the library most often, in the most typical setting of a university. The specialist cannot effectively search for alternatives without a basic understanding of the type of research the investigator is proposing. As you could see just from my reading of the correspondence that I had with the IACUC, if you're not familiar with that area, some of it makes sense, but you can see that there is more that you could do if you had a stronger background in that area. This is obvious, I know that, and as I have said before in the previous lectures, I do entertain the idea of stating the obvious repeatedly in this course, because sometimes that is essential in philosophical discussions. So the most efficient means of communicating is a direct dialogue between the investigator and the information specialist. So you can see that investigators have to spend a great deal of time and effort to accomplish this goal and meet this guideline and provide the justification to the general public. You have to remember that the records of the IACUC, regardless of where that IACUC exists, are open records, so to the general public can have access. They can't just walk in and whip open the file and start reading it, but they can follow the appropriate approaches for making the request and getting the information. So the IACUC and the researchers have to keep in mind that responsibility in not only meeting the responsibility and accepting accountability, but in communicating the information such that it isn't confusing and misleading. Investigators can assist information specialists by being prepared to give precise and specific information about their research or testing procedures. The following may serve as a guideline for the type of information the investigator may be asked to provide. What is your general area of study? For example, cardiology, neurology, toxicology. What species are you currently working with? Rats, dogs, swine, etc. Briefly describe your experimental protocol. What specific systems or parts of the anatomy are involved? Central nervous system, brainstem, parabrachial nucleus. Obviously this is neuro-related. It could be microbiology or any other area. I don't want to seem that I am playing favorites, but obviously at the time of putting this together, I was focused on the neuroscience types of studies that you saw in my prior presentation. Please give correct spellings of these structures, right? And any acronyms. European spellings are important as well because of the world literature and the goal for extensive and exhaustive research on finding alternatives and making sure that it is not duplicated effort. If you are studying the effects of a particular hormone, enzyme, or chemical agent, please give the complete spelling of the compound as well as its trade name and acronym and so on and so forth. Do you know of any prominent authors in your area of research? Have you published any previous literature that relates to your current study? What makes your study unique from previous studies? Testing a new technique, investigating a new compound, further understanding of a biochemical pathway. I think you saw how I dealt with that matter in my response to the IACUC. Are you aware of any possible alternatives to your research, such as experiments conducted on alternative species, cell culture, or in vitro studies? Obviously, it could be added to this list. The computer modeling systems that are becoming more and more common as years go by. Have you had any other searches conducted for you? If so, what databases? Medline, Agricola, Biosys? What keywords you use? Kidney, parathyroid hormone? What years were searched, 85 to the present? So I think you saw that I answered nearly all of these questions in one way or another in response to the IACUC on my proposal back then at the beginning of the new millennium. The search results. As with any type of searching, success in retrieving relevant citations will depend directly on the quality of the information provided. If you've done any type of, even an online search through whatever search machine, search engine you use, AltaVista, Google, all the web, whatever it may be, MSN, there's a large number of them. You know that it can be very challenging to get just the right word combination and to set up your Boolean argument so it gives you just what you want rather than, you know, 500,000 completely unrelated types of hits. So that search strategy obviously is very important. Once you get the initial exchange of information, the specialist can begin formulating a search strategy. The search strategies for alternatives may be divided into two phases: reduction, refinement, and replacement. So the reduction and refinement, as I said, are put together, and replacement is obviously unique. Phase 1, the reduction and refinement, consists of generalized database search used to retrieve citations pertinent to that field of study. The citations retrieved during this phase should provide information on current research, alert the investigator to whether or not they're performing duplicative studies, and possibly provide information on refined experimental techniques. Some approach of reducing the dispersion of the data around the measurement of central tendency, the variance within your experimental data points, as you recall from all those discussions that we had earlier. So refinements on controlling bias and managing confounds and limiting variables and things like that. All of these can impact your parameters involved in estimating your sample size and doing the power analysis. So this can become very important as far as refinement of experimental techniques contributing to reduction. So that interplay is obviously very important. For example, if you're doing primary cell cultures where you have to sacrifice animals to produce a culture that's only going to live for maybe 21 days, would obviously require the use of many more animals than if suddenly permanently or an immortalized transformed cell line became available that basically would not require you ever to euthanize an animal again. So during phase one of the information specialist may find it helpful to develop search strategies using databases available on some compact disk. This probably isn't even reasonable anymore. It was maybe at the turn of the millennium, but there's so much online now, obviously. Probably would just erase this from the list. The Agricola, Medline, Toxline, Life Sciences are examples of several useful databases that are available on CD-ROM, but probably less and less utilized as the online internet resources become so greatly expanded and available. So this allows the information specialist the freedom to experiment with keywords, explore indexes, thesaurus, and read abstracts without the pressure of being charged for online time. We know that that isn't such a significant matter, but it still might be in some settings. If the investigator has published previous literature, it's a good time to read abstracts of his or her previous work and become familiar with terminology used to describe the study and note what terms are used in the index and the abstract. The key words are the index that are being referred to there. Searching on CD-ROM should provide the information specialist with a general idea of how much literature exists on the specific topic, just how big of a list of hits might you get, and how useful might that be. If few relevant citations are found, the information specialist may need to broaden the search strategy or use the expanded capabilities of the online database searching to develop the search. You saw the option that I took was the links provided, for example, on PubMed for related articles. You can click there and go and see the articles cited in that paper and newer publications that actually cite that paper. It can become cumbersome, but it is a quick way to link and go out and do a quick scan. You can look at the abstracts, maybe link right to the research article, and things like that. We have to take these matters seriously, and the IACUC must take them seriously as well and basically require that you comply and not approve the IACUC proposal for the use of animals until satisfactory response is received from the researcher. If few relevant citations are found, we already said that, sorry. If hundreds of citations are retrieved using only a few years' worth of bibliographic data, then it's necessary to consult the investigator on ways to narrow the search. So bouncing back and forth to minimize the list of articles that you have to deal with. Upon completion of phase one, the information specialist should have a basic understanding of the research area, including the literature published in the particular field, the techniques used, commonly used species. The information specialist should be ready to search for possible replacement alternatives. So the following questions may be used to assist in the search for the replacement alternatives. Are there in vitro techniques that may reduce or replace the number of animals? For example, chorioallantoic membrane assay, use of primary cultured hepatocytes, so some other type of cell line. Of course, they're not noting here the immortalized cell lines. Are there any alternative animal models, invertebrates, fish, protozoa, etc.? Have any computer simulations or statistical models been developed that relate to the study? So that's important as well. When searching for alternatives under the phase two replacement, I think that's where we were in the previous slide too. Sorry, let me just go back and double check. We've been talking about phase two for a couple of slides here. Sorry about that. So when searching for alternatives, information specialists should search multiple databases. Again, the multidisciplinary approach to search may yield surprising results, particularly for individuals who are not accustomed to searching the literature outside their general area of study, for example, medicine. The AWIC provides a fact sheet entitled Databases for Biomedical, Veterinary, and Animal Sciences Resources 2 that describes a number of useful databases. Animal testing alternatives is a phrase used to index citations regarding alternatives in the Agricola, Medline, Toxline, and CancerLit databases. So, however, it is not used to index alternative studies in other databases such as the EM-BASE, BioSys previews, life sciences, and CAB abstracts. Although it is useful, this phrase should never be the only strategy used to retrieve information on alternatives. Excuse me. Continuing with phase 2 on focusing on replacement, depending on the study, other terms such as tissue culture, cell culture, in vitro, simulation model, refinement, reduction, or alternative may be used. For a listing of terms that may be helpful when conducting alternative searches, information specialists may refer to the Animal Welfare Information Center, the AWIC Scope Notes 3, available from the AWIC at no charge. It is important to keep in mind that although electronic databases are powerful resource tools, most databases do not index journals before the mid-60s, and relevant information from early studies will not be retrieved. So we can't be so bold to think that some aspect of our proposed studies, at least on a basic informational level, might not already have been completed prior to 1966, right? So in addition, information on alternatives is available in newsletters, books, and proceedings, which are not always on database indexes. So a sample search for alternatives. So the following is an actual search that was requested by an ICUC member and a description of the steps that the IWIC information specialist performed. So the ICUC member requested a search for alternatives to the use of zona-free hamster oocytes to test human sperm penetration, motility, and viability. In a set of general comments, the protocol should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. A perfect strategy to retrieve every citation regarding reduction, refinement, replacement does not exist. Many factors may affect the outcome of a literature search, including the area of research, species involved, procedures used, chemicals tested, experimental design, and whether or not articles have been indexed in that area. Additional factors include the degree of communication between the information specialist and the investigator. We recognize that from reading already. The knowledge and educational background of the information specialist, and the time and money constraints. Obviously, you could continue this, it seems, indefinitely, so some satisfactory endpoint must be agreed upon, recognized, and achieved. The source, AWIC, National Agricultural Library, the Animal Welfare, the AWIC is shown here. And obviously this is the source of much of the information that we're using to discuss here, and it is provided by the USDA.gov. Also, the www.NAL USDA AWIC alternatives tips.htm. So this completes our discussion of consideration of alternatives to the utilization of animals in research. I appreciate your time and attention, and we'll put together a few questions for a quiz on this presentation for you to complete online through the WebCT.